Hello EFD squad and welcome to our brand spanking new chat show on Euro Football Daily Pato. It's Continental Club and today we have
Ted Knutson who joins us. He's actually a football analyst, so he's involved in transfers, in coaching, he's also interested in set pieces, and today we're going to be chatting about some big transfer news and managerial changes coming up in the summer. So the first thing I want to talk to you about, Ted, because I know you're an Arsenal fan and I'm an Arsenal fan too, Arsenal's next manager, well, it's probably going to be Wenger, but if Wenger were to leave in the summer, do you have any ideas about who could replace him and who might fit Arsenal going forward?
I think over the last year there have been a few different rumours, as there are. You know, all big clubs generate rumours. Thomas Tuchel is probably the hottest one. His work at Borussia Dortmund has been quite good. Max Allegri has come up and it's definitely been a media focus. And then there was I think it was a Mirror article back when Leverkusen were facing Spurs in the Champions League that said that Roger Schmidt was possible. He's since been released by Leverkusen, but of those three, I definitely side towards Tuchel as being the best choice.
Sure.
One of the big reasons is that Arsenal's attack is fairly unique. They produce a lot of high quality shots. They've got a lot of possession in and around the box, and Tuchel's teams do that too. Tuchel, in fact, is one of the few coaches or managers in the world that produces really good attacks. Aubameyang's profile of where he took shots and how he took shots completely changed when Tuchel came along versus when Klopp came along.
Yeah.
So I really like him. Also, he adds a pressing element to it, which I think Arsenal would like to shift towards versus a more traditional sort of deep block style that they run right now. Allegri's an interesting choice. He's been very successful at Juventus. The question is whether that success is based on the fact that he's got a super club around him, and Juventus have just outrageous talent.
he had a tough time of it at AC Milan, didn't he?
Exactly, and that might have been part of this dysfunction of AC Milan, though. So it's tough to get a clear picture on Allegri and whether his results are a product of the club or whether the results are largely a product of him, and I don't know.
It's an interesting question though of how good managers are at identifying the players that they do actually need to kind of put their ideas into effect though. I know that we were talking about this the other day, whether Arsenal fans kind of think of it as the kiss of death if Wenger were to sign on for another 2 years, but potentially you might take Wenger and an elite sporting director over just a simple change of manager and no sporting director, or a poor one.
It's possible. Having worked with quite a number of coaches now, I'm not sure that coaches are great at identifying or evaluating talent.
Okay.
And this is one area where the sporting director really comes into play. Part of that is because they just don't see the breadth of players.
It's not exposed to them as often,
Well, exactly, and they often want guys that they know, or from leagues that they know, or from people that have reviewed them that they trust. So that trust between the head coach / manager and the sporting director is a huge thing. Because if you don't have that, you end up with guys that come that are talents that don't play, which is a disaster. Or they sit there and they veto a number of deals that should be good for the club and produce the talent they want.
Do you think that's why Kamali failed in England with Liverpool and with Spurs? Damien Kamali was a relatively little trust between the managers and him, or was English football not ready for a director of football at that point?
I mean, part of that is the cultural element. This is absolutely standard across the continent, and it's a normal thing. Whereas England has kind of the all-powerful manager in mind. Sir Alex Ferguson, to some extent, and a little bit Wenger. These are the two dominant figures in managerial over the last 25 years, right? And so for England, that is the concept that they stick to. But in reality, world football is so big now, and you're looking at so much talent and so many different players from around the world, whether it be Brazil, Argentina, Chile, like Alexis Sanchez. You look over and in the Bundesliga clubs, they're bringing Koreans and Japanese players on a regular basis. And then we've got the whole of Europe, which is actually a massive talent trove. So you cannot do a normal coach's job inside the Premier League where you have to focus on all these elements every single week, and in fact sometimes 2 times a week if you're in the Champions League. You can't do that job and do all the recruitment from the rest of the world. It's not possible.
Tuchel's your man. You want Tuchel in charge of Arsenal, don't you? But would you like someone in there next to him like Zorc is at Dortmund?
Well, I mean, Zorc would be kind of the dream, but I can't imagine him leaving Dortmund. I know he played at Dortmund as well. He seems phenomenally good at what he does, and not only does he seem to get the players in that you'd want to get in, they always seem to get them in at least reported fees, which seem a lot lower than they should be.
No, that's very true.
Like Usman
I think
Dembele,
Rafa
Guerreiro as well.
Yes, both of those were great signings. I think you see their style of recruitment change in the last couple of years. Partly when Tuchel came on, like they did some of this before, but you see the younger player gambles really happen this summer, and maybe even a little bit before that they started to transition. And I might have worked for a guy who was good friends with Thomas Tuchel that talked to him quite a bit about how we viewed the possibilities. And they shop in the Harrods bracket, whereas down in Brentford we were shopping at Asda.
There's nothing wrong with Asda.
Nothing wrong at all.
Get some bargains at Asda, but I think maybe does the Alexander Isaac transfer this summer epitomise that, really going in big for such a young talent? What is he, 17? 18?
Yeah, there are rumours that that's caused a bit of a problem, at Dortmund.
Well, this is the challenge. What is their goal this year?
Yeah.
And what is their goal overall? For Dortmund, they need to be able to recruit talent that right now can play in the Bundesliga, but they need to have talent that's going to grow into world-class talent. They can't afford it. Like, they can't compete with a Real Madrid or a Barcelona or Chelsea or Manchester City. They cannot do it. So they have to find the best possible young players and give them some time to develop. The issue has been, regardless of how good these guys are, you've got a lot of 19 and 20 and 21-year-olds that are there facing off against 25-year-olds, fully grown men inside of the Bundesliga. And it's been a transition period, and these guys have to learn. And Tuchel's a great coach. There's no question about it. He's developing this talent. That's one of the things that makes him quite interesting for Arsenal, because if they're going to continue to develop young talent as well as having talent that's already there as part of the squad, you need a guy that's able to do that. You don't want guys like maybe a Mourinho who just plays veterans as much as possible. Like, he's done a little less than that.
Instant success, doesn't he? That
exactly, but he's done a little less than that at Manchester United, but it's still kind of his modus operandi, where you see a lot of guys that were really, really good, like maybe a Salah, Kevin De Bruyne, Lukaku. It is a long list of guys that Mourinho got rid of that ended up being really outstanding players, but they were just a year or two too early for what Mourinho wanted.
That actually brings us nicely to our next point, doesn't it? Romelu Lukaku. I said to Patrick, I think there's a couple of teams, Chelsea, Manchester United in particular, that are a Romelu Lukaku away from potentially challenging for the title, retaining the title next season. I think he's that good. But with the fees being banded around between 75 to 85 million, as someone who often acts as a transfer consultant, what value would you place on him, and where do you think he should go essentially?
So I love Lukaku, and I thought he was really good. I thought when he moved for his permanent deal, he went in about the right price. Like, he's a really good prospect. He was already a good player in the Premier League, but we didn't know what his ceiling looked like. And also the television deal that was there before was like almost half as much as the current deal is now. So he moved for like 30 million, somewhere between 28 and 32 and a half, I think. Now the question is, what are his limitations? Where does he fit in? And then who's willing to pay for it? And his first touch is still a little rough. Like, physically, he's one of the best players in the league. He's lightning fast. He actually is a better creator than people give him credit for, which I think
6 assists in the league this season.
It often goes unnoticed. The question is, how good is his hold-up play, and how can he fit in with like maybe a more passer-orientated style? Like, he won't fit at City. Like, we know that City have, Pep has occasionally had big men that went there, and they did all right, but they were always kind of a square peg in a somewhat round hole. He might fit in at Manchester United, but do they really need him? They've got, Rashford probably looks like long-term is going to be the center forward of the future for them if they continue going that way. You're going to get another year of Ibrahimovic, so maybe they don't need him this year. Chelsea is the interesting one, because I don't think they need him, but they might not agree with me. So if Diego Costa leaves this year, then if you look at Chelsea, the rest of Chelsea's squad, they've got Michi, who could definitely play up front and looks like one of the best prospects in the world before he came to Chelsea. They've got Tammy Abraham, who's lighting it up down in the Championship, and has exactly, and has a package of skills that is unbelievable. Like, he is 191 centimeters tall. He's really fast. He's stronger than all the center backs in the Championship. You see them foul him all the time.
There's a few big boys in the Championship, isn't
and
there?
he plays wide when you need him to. Like, we watch this stuff.
6'4" guy out wide. Is that 6'4"?
Yeah.
190.
So we watched his work in in like the U21 team, And he was often out wide. Solanke would often be in the center, or they'd switch it up.
Another Chelsea boy, Dominic Solanke.
Exactly, and he was doing just fine. And they've got Bertrand Traore, who's at Ajax right now. Like, they might feel that they need a world-class guy, but it feels like their talent level in their academy and around the club is already there. They just have to be willing to take the risk.
Yeah.
Kind of, okay, well, let's get back to then like a solid comparison. Like if you were Man United and you had like, let's say 80 to 90 mil, you know, so they'd actually cut your pocket money this
A
summer.
war chest, as they describe
Oh
it
yeah,
on
of course.
Football Manager.
So it's a war
chest.
chest.
But this is the amazing thing about United. Pogba's transfer fee and wages is essentially the gap between United's commercial revenue and the next closest club. They could literally buy a Pogba every single season and not wince about it at all.
That's
how
crazy.
big
That's
the gap
horrible.
is.
That's crazy.
And thankfully they haven't used it very well, because
Yeah,
otherwise
thank
United
God.
would
Yeah.
be completely dominating the
it's-
Premier League again.
That's because they have, wine sponsors, tractor sponsors. There's nothing that, Man United and Ed Woodward won't go in for, is there?
The official water sponsor of this.
Yeah, exactly. Official gin sponsor. I mean water, sorry. Well, drinking during the day,
Yeah,
things
of
have hit a
course it's
new
water.
new nadir on Football Daily, but yeah.
So if you were Man United, would you go for, let's say Lukaku and let's say Griezmann? Who do you go for? I mean, you'd expect Mourinho everyone says, he likes a big forward, and with some reason. But Griezmann is certainly more polished.
So, assuming they're keeping Ibrahimovic as opposed to the other way around.
Okay.
I think Griezmann gets them more. Partly because we know that he plays out wide. We know that he'll defend. He's a very earnest defender. Rashford, I think, is still developing. He's not quite ready to have that full time. And the question is what happens to Martial. And is Martial even a wide man, or should he be more central as well?
Yeah.
But I think Griezmann has proven himself. He's capable of interacting and playing in and around the final third. Quite a good interlinking player, and he's going to give you scoring from wide, which is something that they kind of have lacked a little bit.
Yeah.
So if they can keep the cohesion in the squad, have an Ibrahimovic up front, and then have a Griezmann out wide. Maybe Mkhitaryan in that central 10 spot. That just leaves them with the right wide forward that they have to figure out who's playing there, and they have a lot of different options. I think Griezmann gets them the most.
It's horribly good.
Juan Mata's their next highest top goal scorer right at the moment with 8 goals after Zlatan. They need that, as you say, that kind of player who can chip in, because that would have turned an awful lot of those draws into victories, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it depends what your team's like, I guess. I mean, like if you look at the Bundesliga, like with Bayern Munich this season, they've got Lewandowski who's up on 20 plus, but then their second top goal scorer is down on kind of 7 or 8, and the same for Dortmund, I think. So I mean, I guess they seem more reliant.
But maybe
we
they
say
have
you
more
want more
players
goals
on
around the
8
squad.
rather than Juan Mata on 8.
No, they definitely
And
have more players in that region.
Ribery,
Yeah, sure.
Robin,
Sure.
Douglas Costa.
But you'd expect that Pogba's going to spool up a little bit as time goes
Yeah,
on.
definitely.
Like, I mean, his chances will get finished.
Definitely assist-wise, yeah.
Yeah. But okay, so we were talking about Lukaku and how he might fit into different teams. From what you said, it would suggest that he might not be a good fit for a team like Arsenal. But it looks like they might lose Sanchez. If they were going to lose Sanchez, who should they buy?
If we can rewind this year, they should get Ousmane Dembele.
Yeah.
And I think
Both Arsenal
Making me
fans.
sad, Ted.
Dembele was one of those guys that stands out as clear as day in the statistics, and he wasn't going to cost that much. Just get him. Just if you've got the money, make it happen.
Yeah.
A French prospect, how is this not Arsenal?
Monty's
DNA?
favourite
No.
market, the French league. Had to get him in there somewhere,
Yeah, get
my
Monty
boy. But yeah.
I think the as big an issue as Sanchez is that Theo Walcott looks like he's gradually falling off.
Right.
And so now they have to worry about both wide forward spots.
Yeah, I
And
saw your graphs on Walcott actually, and it's alarming drop off year on year.
It is, and part of it may be the ACL issue. Part of it just might be natural aging.
Yeah.
Part of it might be that he's not been as involved in the Arsenal attack. I don't know, and he's never that healthy. That's always a big issue, right? He doesn't play that many games. So with that in mind, I mean, it's tricky. Like Memphis would have been perfect.
Yeah.
Memphis is the type of guy that
You're a big Memphis
creates, as a wide forward, he creates more than almost anybody else in Europe. He disappeared in United, but he disappeared at a United club where they took fewer shots a game than Sam Allardyce's Sunderland.
Yeah.
How is that even possible?
Jesus.
And,
brutal.
and how do you evaluate their attackers on that? Because it's clearly not the fact that they didn't have good players. They had good players. They were told not to attack in all these circumstances.
Yeah.
So I don't think that you hold it against them that much. So Memphis would have been ideal, and then from there you really start going to the data and then doing the work. Why not Griezmann? Maybe they didn't want to afford him, but like he's also that type of guy, and
Yeah.
he'll defend.
Yeah.
There are other guys in Europe that kind of fit the profile, but it's tricky because you're looking at one of the best 5 players in the Premier League. How do you replace him directly, and how much does that cost?
I mean, it's like when he came to the club, we were saying he didn't have that superstar status, did he? And although he'd actually scored, he's only been outscored by the likes of Diego Costa and Messi and Ronaldo in La Liga, he didn't arrive with that sort of responsibility on his shoulders, did he? So is there someone similar we can see out there now? That's maybe of a similar standard to Sanchez was 3 or 4 years ago, who you could bring in for that 25 to 30 million bracket?
Like maybe if
But maybe he doesn't have that. Yeah,
fully
Fekir,
healed,
okay.
at Lyon, but we know that Lyon have just recently opened a giant stadium. They've got like 60,000 people that they can fit. It's gorgeous. They're definitely investing in not only the men's side but the women's side. The women's side might be one of the best squads in the world, and their owner has put a lot of money in that and recruiting some of the best female players so that they can build that.
So they're really looking to flesh out that brand then.
Well, exactly. He feels very strongly
players,
about that. But they just signed Memphis. Memphis has big wages, or at least has pretty big. And if they can hold on to a Memphis, and they've been paying Lacazette, and we know Lacazette makes good money from, maybe they have a little more space that they can hold on to a Fekir, and you can't get him for 25 or 30 million. You got to pay more than that. Okay. So I don't know. It's interesting. They have a lot of work to do, and the question is, do they re-sign these guys? Maybe you re-sign Ozil, you let Sanchez go because he wants to go. And then it might take a war chest in order to rebuild Arsenal, and I think they've got some serious needs. Oh, maybe they'll sell Bellerin to Barcelona for.
You've cheered me up.
Callum Chambers will come back. He can go into right back.
Really
maybe
upsetting.
Jenkinson.
Well, we've always got Joel Campbell to come back from Lyon, so.
So that was our first episode of Continental Club, guys. A huge thanks to Ted for lending us his time and expertise. Who would you like to see us interview next time? Let us know in the comments below.
Yeah, thanks very much, Ted. And as ever, guys, don't forget to like and subscribe.
Thank you.